Hello, everyone, and welcome once again to the Healthy Living Podcast. I'm your host, Gina Horan. We are barefoot in studio today with local celebrity Langdon Dinsdale. You may have seen him on American Ninja Warrior. He's also known as the Barefoot Ninja. Langdon, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. Glad to be here.
Awesome. Now, you're also known as the Barefoot Ninja. That's what your shirt says. And we're going to get to that a little bit later, talk about how you're barefoot all the time, and we're going to talk about why you're called the Barefoot Ninja. But let's start a little bit with your roots. You're from Canada, true?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
talk about growing up and going to school and, a little bit of your background.
Cool. Yeah, I was born and raised in a little town outside of Ottawa, Ontario in Canada. So I was there. I lived there until I graduated college, basically. And then my family, when I was graduating high school, they moved down here. I'm the oldest of 5 kids. So I've got 2 younger brothers, 2 younger sisters, and they moved down here when I was going into college. And so I stayed up there for another 5 years. And then, I never thought I wanted to come to Florida. I loved Canada.
Yeah.
I would come visit them every year at Christmas, and then every year it was harder to go back to the cold.
Right. Did they move for your parents' job?
My dad got a job and relocated the family. So,
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, we used to vacation to Disney every other year growing up, so they loved Florida. So.
Right, like most Canadians. And so were you excited that Florida actually has hockey? Or do you care about hockey?
I am probably one of the only Canadians that didn't grow up playing hockey. I chose basketball as my main sport growing up, so I was an outlier.
That's funny.
Yeah.
So you studied kinetics at the University of Ottawa. Why did you go into that field?
So being an athlete, I really, really liked the science of movement. And I got kind of through studying a little bit in high school while I was training and kind of getting into the physical therapy side of things. I kind of got curious, and then that's what I didn't really know what I wanted to do going into college other than play basketball. I was just an athlete, and I was like, the school is secondary, you know what I mean? And then I got injured early in my college career and ended up having to lean into what I was actually studying. And so I was taking human kinetics at the University of Ottawa and planned on going to med school after. And that was kind of the path I leaned into. But through that process, I kind of realized that I didn't want to do that version. I didn't want to end up being a physician or a surgeon who was kind of more on the medicine surgery side, especially because I wasn't able to find help with my injuries. And so I kind of went through the kinesiology and human kinetics program hoping to help other athletes and people overcome injuries and things like that. And then shortly after graduating, I started kind of working in clinic and in different settings, and I realized that I didn't really have the tools to help people the way I would have needed to have been helped. And so I started studying everything I could eat up and find, everything from movement to training, sports conditioning, physiotherapy, physical therapy, even manual osteopathic medicine. And I spent probably the next decade I was taking maybe 20 plus seminars and licenses a year. Every other weekend I was traveling somewhere around the globe and trying to learn everything I could to help people. So I have a bit of a unique kind of blend of things that I do with people.
Right. So now your passion is helping people overcome chronic pain more holistically with movement. Can you talk a little bit about the moment you decided that really was going to be your path of, osteopathy and more natural remedies?
For sure. Yeah, I was in studying movement. That's when I started realizing how big of a scope it can be, and how the more I learned, the more I realized I didn't know. And so that's kind of what gave me that hunger to want to understand the body in every way possible. I don't really know if I had a moment, but as I kind of am someone who goes with the flow, and I let the current kind of dictate where I put my attention, and excitement is something that drives me. So things that I get excited about, I lean into those. And I was obsessively excited constantly about studying not just pain, but movement and health and all things related to health. So, and applying what I was learning as I was studying was really what opened my eyes to the power of, different versions of movement. You know what I mean? There's a whole world of people that are in chronic pain, and most people have a very tough time finding any relief. You know what I mean? And allopathic medicine, like what I was originally going to study, as wonderful as it is for what it's meant for, it doesn't really look for the root cause of things. It's a little bit more symptom based and chases the symptoms and offers medicine or surgery to try to treat the symptoms, but none of it really fixes the root cause of pain. And pain is simple to understand when you really step back and have a wide lens view, but a lot of our modern system is compartmentalized. Everything is, if you have a knee problem, you go to a knee specialist and they tell you what surgery or injection or thing you can do for your knee, or maybe exercise for your knee, but the whole body's connected. And oftentimes where the pain is not where the problem is.
That's so interesting. So let's talk a little bit about then, chronic pain in the United States and kind of how opioids have been a problem. I'm imagining that was something that kind of, breaks your heart a little bit when you know that, it takes a lot of patience, I guess, to do what you do, and you look at the chess rather than the checkers of how to solve it. Talk about, like you were saying, movement. How, for example, my knee. Oh, my knee hurts. Well, is it your back? Is it your feet? How can you kind of help the knee rather than just an injection or a pill? Yeah,
I'm a big believer that if you don't assess, you just guess. And most places you go to for help with pain, they either because they don't know how, or it's just not the way their practice is set up, they aren't able to spend the time to really look deep and assess what's going on. And so whenever I work with someone, there's a big portion of it that is biomechanical assessment, physiological assessment, but I also dive a lot deeper into quality of tissue and physiology. I look at blood reports. I look at the holistic part of what's going on with the pain. So oftentimes some people might be doing some good movement patterns or some exercise or some rehabilitation, but their quality of tissue might be terrible. And then it's not going to respond very well to the stimulus if their nutrition isn't serving their pain, or if their hormones are imbalanced, or many other factors. You know what I mean?
So do you work with regular MDs, because you're talking about getting labs and looking at nutrition, so it works in tandem with?
Yes, 100%. So I have many patients of mine that are MDs and doctors, and I help them with their issues, but I also work with chiropractors, doctors, other therapists as well. I mentor some people in these fields to help them be better able to handle working in their clinic. It's one of those things where there's so much information, and there's so many people that are specialists and are brilliant at what they do, but a lot of the specialists don't talk to each other, right? And you'll go see this specialist and this nutritionist and this doctor, and they're kind of all trying to help you in their own way, but then somehow I see a lot of people get lost and they get spit out the other end with no real relief of anything. You know what I mean?
Right.
End up with maybe some medications or some injections or some nutritional advice, but a lot of it seems to miss the boat.
Okay, so in Claremont, you're the owner of Soma Health and Performance, and you are a holistic physiotherapist and pain and rehabilitation specialist. So if I give you a jingle and say, okay, Barefoot Ninja, I'm coming into the office today because I hurt my ankle, what would be the assessment? How would we start a relationship?
So the initial consultation session is roughly 2 hours long. And first, I would send you a lot of intake paperwork to fill out so that I can really get a deeper understanding of what's going on behind the scenes, hormonally and with your health and with your quality of tissue, as well as everything else, if there's medication, supplementation, everything else that's going on, so that I get a really in-depth health history. It helps me paint a really vivid picture of what's going on. And then when someone comes in, a lot of it hinges on the specific person, right? So there's no one size fits all, blanket approach to this. Everyone I work with is very unique, and there's something called biological individuality. So I tailor it very specifically to the person that I'm working with. So there's a lot of education on all the lifestyle factors that someone would need to address to, in the background, allow the system to heal. But then there's the physical and physiological assessment where I dive really deep into comparative range of motion and movement-based assessments. And there's a whole world of it. Again, I over the last 15 years, I've taken over 180 licenses and seminars on all things movement, nutrition, health, hormones, et cetera, et cetera. So within that, I could assess someone for 50 hours, right? When they come in, depending on what their issues are, I tailor the assessment really specifically to what I feel is going on and what I think could help them. And then I kind of, it's a little bit of a puzzle to solve with each person because no two people are exactly alike.
Right. It seems very forward thinking, just to say. So Soma, not an acronym. I learned that one as I was on the Google today. So talk about the Soma method of, physiotherapy and what you can teach our listeners and viewers about that. Soma.
Yeah. So the
capitals.
Yes. The word Soma is a word that means all the tissues and every part of an organism aside from the bacteria. So it really resonated with me because I treat the whole body. I treat the whole person. You know what I mean? There is even an emotional and mental component to healing from pain. And there's a very correlated relationship with that. Some people have stress and other factors that are a big piece of the puzzle. And if you leave a big stone unturned, someone's going to be banging their head against the wall trying to get relief, and they're not going to get it. You know what I mean? So,
is this relatively new, or is like an ancient, formula?
I would say it's more ancient than it is new.
Or maybe just we're
Yeah. When modern science came around and started putting everything under a microscope, I feel like they started kind of looking at the surface level and pushing away all the deeper things, because there are many cultures. I've studied with medicine men and shaman from more ancient type cultures and the way they heal, and they prescribe certain plant medicines and things like that. And some of them have been doing it for so long, but then we've come around and been like, oh, this is the new way. We have machines and technology, and that's the way we should do it. You know what I mean?
Of course. I mean, and there's a whole industry behind that, but that's for another show. And, I've always thought that people have been around for quite a long time. Mm-hmm. People have had pain for quite a long time. And for quite a long time, there have been people that have helped them before modern medicine. So again, let's revisit, how do they work together? Because you can't push everything aside. So the balance, I would imagine, is important.
I think balance is probably the best word. If I could pick one word that I help people do, is find balance. Because we shouldn't live in extremes, but our current culture really promotes that instant gratification and that, quick fix version of everything. And for most health and chronic pain issues, there is no quick fix. There's no magic pill. You have to make changes in your life. You know what I mean? Another example of this, when I'm working with autoimmune disorder patients or cancer patients, 90% of the food that's in the grocery store today didn't exist 100 years ago, but neither did 90% of the illnesses. And I don't think that's a coincidence.
Right.
A lot of it is because we've gotten away from balance to either, profit from food and food-like products, or to quick fix everything and make it so that we don't have to spend time in the kitchen. We don't have to spend time going to the farmer. You know what I mean?
Right. And then we always encourage people to shop around, instead of 100%. In the middle.
Yeah.
Okay, Langdon, Barefoot Ninja, we will be right back. We're going to talk a little bit about his experience at the 2024 Olympics in Paris. And later on, we'll talk about the Barefoot Ninja and the Ninja Warrior competition, right? When we come back. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Barefoot. Woo!
Is pain or restricted range of motion keeping you on the sidelines? Get back in the game with expert orthopedic care from UF Health Medical Group Orthopedics. UF Health Medical Group Orthopedics provides robotic-assisted surgical joint repairs and replacements, post-operative care, and inpatient rehabilitation services, all close to home, right here in Lake and Sumter counties. And for those unexpected injuries, UF Health Medical Group Orthopedics offers convenient walk-in and same-day appointments. To learn more or to schedule an appointment with one of their specialists, call 352-323-5665.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Healthy Living Podcast. I'm Gina Horan. We're still barefoot, still hanging out with the Barefoot Ninja, Langdon Dinsdale. Now, Langdon, first of all, let's talk about one thing that I find interesting, and I'm a little bit jelly because you, for years, literally almost a decade, I think, were off the socials. You were just ostriching and having nothing to do with it, which I completely envy you in a way. But you were sort of dragged back into reality by someone that is a bit famous now, don't you think? And got you into a kind of a second wind in your career.
Yeah.
Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, so one of my clients that I've been working with for about 4 years, his name's Kenny Bednarik. He's an Olympic sprinter. For Team USA.
Right.
Yeah,
Yes.
and he for years was kind of nudging me to apply for the show, and the show would sometimes reach out and ask him to go compete.
So you mean Ninja Warrior, like what's it called again?
Sorry, American Ninja Warrior.
American
is the name
Ninja
of the
Warrior. So
TV
that's
show.
how so he was already your client.
He was my client. He came to me in 2020 because he had a bunch of injuries that were disrupting his career, so.
And you were off the social media, and he was like, oh, you need to go back. So we're going to talk about American Ninja Warrior a little bit later, but talk about so he dragged you back onto social media because
he thought that I could reach more people with it. He was pretty convincing, and a lot of people were kind of nudging me to maybe put some things out there, because when I have my own private practice and I work with people one-on-one, and it limits the amount of people I can work with, right? So I begrudgingly let my wife make me an Instagram page for the Barefoot Ninja, and so I've been learning the learning curve of putting myself out there a little bit, kind of alongside of everything else that's been happening to me.
Right. So then Kenny goes to the Olympics in Tokyo, I think. Yep. And then he goes to Paris and was quite successful this summer. So did you go with him?
Yeah, I wasn't allowed to go in 2020 because of COVID.
Right.
They pushed it to 21, but the stands were empty. The stadium was empty. It was very strange. He said it was like a quiet Olympics. So me and his family, and we all had to watch from home. But then the Paris Olympics, I was able to go, and two of my clients were able to go there, and both medaled. So it was.
Who's the other one?
His name's Aaron Brown.
So Aaron Brown and Kenny went to the Olympics. So were you like already in? They're like, you're coming this time. Was your family able to go with you?
Not this time. No, it was purely business trip. I didn't have much free time, so it wouldn't have been as much fun to bring them along. But
did you stay in the Olympic Village with him? Or did you?
Only athletes were allowed in the Olympic Village. I went and visited him every day in the Olympic Village, and I would bring him food, and I would kind of do therapy with him and stuff. So I was in the Olympic Village a lot, but I had to stay at an Airbnb just outside of it.
Okay, and so talk about, we'll talk a little bit about what you would do for an athlete at an Olympics. Did you have like a coterie of trainers, or were you the only one? Just you?
Just me, yeah. I'm kind of his Swiss Army knife in a sense. So
I love that.
With many of my clients as well, but with him specifically, I serve as a nutritionist, and I'm kind of in charge of a lot of his rehabilitation, his performance-based training, optimizing everything from his functional neurology, making sure everything's kind of all systems go and he's ready to go. I rehabilitate any injuries he gets, or help him to bulletproof to prevent future injuries or limit the chances. I do a lot of manual work and articular pumping and fascial work. And
okay, pump the brakes there. What does that mean?
Sorry, whole bunch of
all right.
stuff.
I love it. Yeah, but what is articular?
It's a type of hands-on fascial work where it's almost like pumping for joints. So pumping the joints open, pumping fluids into the joints, helps kind of optimize recovery, helps with the fascial system, right? I'm not sure if you're familiar with fascia.
Oh, am I ever? We'll talk about that one because
Okay,
I've got some major issues with that.
Cool.
So I'm very familiar, but talk to our listeners about that.
So fascia is kind of the webbing of tissue in your body around your muscles, and technically your ligaments and joints also are considered fascia. It is actually probably the more important part of the physical body to treat, especially in an athlete.
Okay.
But for so long, it was muscles. Everyone focused on muscles, right? In my undergrad, I was just studying the picture of the 656 muscles, and as long as you memorize that picture, you're good to go as, in the movement world.
Right.
But really that doesn't carry over because
So is that a ligament? Is the fascia ligament?
fascia is not just ligaments and tendons, but also there is interstitial fluid that is kind of like a gel in a sense that is
Okay.
considered fascia, as well as there's like webbing around all the tissue, and there's layers of fascia. So fascia is like the stuff other than the muscle and bones and organs and skin.
Sure,
So
sure.
very important. I would consider it almost the more intelligent part of the body. A lot of the receptors the brain communicates with are in the fascial network. So a lot of what we do is treating the fascia, fascial stretching versus muscular stretching, things like that. Of course, muscle is a piece of the puzzle, but muscle to me is like the dumb meat. It's doing what it's being told to do from the fascial network and fascial system. So
Fantastic. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. So you're at the Olympics and your athletes, Aaron and Kenny, are there. And I think, did he one medal, a silver in the 200?
yeah, Kenny won the silver medal in Paris in the 200 meter, and he also won the silver medal in the same race in Tokyo in 2020.
Awesome. Okay. So because that's a mid-range race,
Yeah.
do you train anybody differently for sprints and long distance? How would that work? And
Yes. So, I mean, in terms of energy system
Yeah.
and glycolysis and glycolytic and stuff that I want to try to dumb it down, because I'm a big
Sure.
believer that if you can't explain something to a 12-year-old, you don't really know what you're talking about.
Okay, fantastic.
So
I'm
it's-
12. Let's go.
Yeah, it's something I live by, but there's a very big difference because they use completely different systems in their body, right?
Okay.
Both Kenny and Aaron are 100 and 200 meter sprinters, and so they both
Wow.
competed in the 100 meter, the 200 meter, and the 4x100 meter. So
Okay.
a lot of what they work on is short burst training, and they're out on the track with their coach 5 days a week, just doing sprint work. And then
Right.
they usually come to me after practice, and we work in my clinic 4 to 5 days a week on filling in the gaps on maybe what they don't get in that system. You know what I mean?
Okay.
So depending on whether it's rehabilitation, if they're working through something, or optimizing some version, because I assess everything with them. I assess structural issues, I assess performance-based analytics. So there's a whole world of stuff behind the scenes that we do, and then really it's just tailoring to kind of fill in the gaps on what they need to optimize, because for them, a split second is everything. You know what I mean?
So you seem like the type of person that would not care about any weird controversies that happen at the Olympics, and I'm hoping that you guys are just sort of in your bubble and
Always in our bubble.
did not
Laser focused.
deal with any of that nonsense. So you were laser focused
sure-
off the socials.
I'm sure a lot of it in the news was bigger than when we were actually there, because everything seemed to be pretty okay.
Right. I mean, I was just very curious because I remember as a child watching the Olympics, just it was so much about the athletes and the games. And then all of a sudden it became this 3-ring circus. And I was like, wait, where are the athletes? Like,
Yep.
so is that kind of what happened there? You were just very
Yeah.
concentrated on, even
Very,
after they
very
were done?
focused and concentrated before, during, and after, because after then there was medal ceremonies and other things we had to go do. And
Were you able to stay for the opening and closings? Or?
no, I flew in because both of the athletes that I had there were only competing from, I believe, like August 2nd until the 9th.
Okay.
And so, and the opening ceremonies was way before.
Yeah.
And I flew out basically when they were done. When we were done everything, then I flew home because I missed my family and I had my practice that I had to get back to.
Right.
And all my other clients. So,
Right.
yeah.
Well, we're going to talk about your other practice in just a minute. Barefoot Ninja, a little bit more of that when we come back. Don't go anywhere.
Are you ready for your future to take flight? Whether you're graduating high school or looking to level up, Lake Sumter State College offers affordable degrees and certificates that will punch your ticket to success in a rewarding career. Plus, with programs like Direct Connect to UCF, your opportunities with LSSC are endless. So, what are you waiting for? Join us in Leesburg, Claremont, Sumterville, Four Corners, or online. Learn more at lssc.edu.
Welcome back, everyone. We're still barefoot and here with American Ninja Warrior, the Barefoot Ninja, he calls himself. And it's because you have not worn shoes for 10 years or so. We're going to talk about that first, and then we'll talk about you on American Ninja Warrior. So, no shoes for what, 9 years now?
Close to 9 years. I've
Okay.
been probably 98% barefoot.
So talk about obviously why that came about, and then how do you navigate the real world out there when they're like no shoes, no service,
So I started out studying the human body, right?
Okay,
And
yes.
in my studies, a recurring theme was how our feet are these brilliantly designed mechanisms to allow us to do everything we need feet for, right? And a lot of the shoes nowadays have all this thick cushioning, technology, stability, and also they're not really shaped like feet anymore. And so many people, their feet are getting deformed and weakened drastically by wearing shoes. And so originally, once I understood this in the human body, I was looking for barefoot style shoes.
Right.
Where they had a very thin sole that was flexible, a wide toe box to allow room for the foot to be the foot, not jammed in. And then no high heels, because most, even running shoes, I would consider high heels.
Okay.
You know what I mean? And that, it's like you're walking down a hill all day. It's not good for your joints. It forces your body and your tension to lean forward and puts a lot of stress into places it shouldn't. But I slowly over the years would just kind of push the limits on doing things barefoot, because as I was realizing how healthy it is to be barefoot and to ground yourself. I'm not sure if you're familiar with grounding.
I am a little bit, but maybe our listeners aren't.
Yeah,
so let's talk about it.
When you connect to the earth by standing on real grass or ground, your body absorbs a lot of the negative ions that from the earth that help our body combat oxidative stress and things that are kind of stressful in our system. There's even something called forest bathing, where hospitals in certain parts of the world will take their chronic pain patients out walking barefoot in the forest. Ooh. Because it's proven now that will help their pain more than the best pain meds we have access to or comparable. So there's a whole science and world behind just standing barefoot outside, but then also your feet get so much stronger and functionally able to handle what we need our feet for. And a lot of people have chronic foot pain and bunions and deformities and issues and stuff like that. So,
well, I've never worn high heels, and I'm only 5 feet tall. So my girlfriends who were 5'9" would wear heels and just look at me like I was crazy. And now I'm like, well, who's laughing now?
Yeah.
But my issue, and I have to talk to you about this, is I have plantar fasciitis in one of my feet, and my doctors are like, if you walk on cement with no shoes, it's going to get worse.
Yeah.
So talk about that a little bit.
So with doctors, one thing that I say is with them, to a hammer, everything's a nail, right? They are kind of looking at everything through their specialty, right? And like a foot doctor, for example, they're more likely going to refer you to an orthotic or some kind of special shoe, rather than, go and rehabilitate your foot and put all this time and energy and effort into fixing the problem. It's much easier to be like, go buy this shoe, tomorrow your foot will feel great, rather than you got to work at it for weeks to months. You know what I mean?
Right.
So,
well, we'll talk about that one later. I'll have to make an appointment and talk about that. I want to know how you get around in your everyday airports and stores. And obviously you get pedicures, right? Because your wife probably wouldn't.
She makes me, when I have something where I'm going to be on a TV show or I'm filming for something, she's the first one to make sure I don't have gnarly looking feet.
Right. She insists. But talk about how the world perceives you and what's that been like?
Yeah, I can only imagine how the world perceives me, but I started.
Probably don't care.
Not at all. I love it. I started off being barefoot everywhere that I could, but I would still wear barefoot shoes to work and to possibly, if I traveled or if I went to a store. And then in 2015, I opened my own practice. One of the big drivers and motivators was so that I had no one that could tell me to put on shoes at work for that 8 hours a day.
That.
And so then I slowly progressed to, okay, well, let me try going into stores barefoot and see what happens. And I'm not someone who's ever trying to cause trouble. I'm not like a rebel who's like,
yeah. And you're Canadian, so that kind of blends in a little bit.
Canadian.
Yeah.
So like I if someone asked me to put on shoes, I would be glad to go put on some of my barefoot sandals or something. But no one ever really asked. And, in years and years and years, maybe once a year or twice a year, a manager, when I was checking out, would be like, hey, next time, can you put on shoes? And I'd, sure, of course.
Oh, my gosh.
So then I pushed the limits more and more, and then started traveling barefoot and realized that for half my time through the airport, I think everyone assumes I'm just getting ready for the TSA.
Right.
I assume, because no one says anything.
That's
and then
built
once
in.
I get through TSA, I just go straight to the gate and then no one says anything. And then if once in a while when I'm getting on the on the airplane, they'll ask, oh, do you have shoes? And I'll be like, oh yeah, they're in my bag. And they're like, okay, cool. And I just don't wear it the whole flight. And even when I went to Paris for the Olympics, I didn't wear shoes there or back or the whole time. So
well, it is France, but I mean, because I lived in Canada for a while, and I really have a feeling that you exude niceness, and I think people just go, okay, well, he's good. He's not going to cause any trouble.
Yeah, exactly.
So then let's get into American Ninja Warrior competition.
Yes.
You're the Barefoot Ninja. You're known as the Barefoot Ninja. I've seen it, and that's what they're calling you throughout your entire, affair, your entire, when you go through your course, right?
Yep.
So how did you get into being an American Ninja Warrior? And I know you're doing it again. So let's talk about that.
Yes. So I have always been someone who pursued challenging myself physically. As I was studying different modalities, I would challenge myself to try it out, whether it was gymnastics training or a triathlon or, running a marathon barefoot or whatnot. And I would always challenge myself. And then I was taking my kids to a Ninja Warrior gym locally. And this was a couple of years ago.
Here? There's one?
Yeah, there's one in Orlando
okay.
called Obstacle Ninja Academy. And it's fantastic. And my kids and and my wife got into it since I competed on the show as well. So we now go 3 or 4 days a week and train so there.
Cute.
So I took them, and while I was there watching them take a class, someone asked me if I was competing in the competition that weekend. And I was like, what do you mean me? Like, this is a kid's thing, right? I didn't know grown-ups could do it.
Right.
Because I'm almost 40, right, at this point. And so then I was like, oh, this seems fun. So I signed up and went and winged that, thing. And I did well enough that I got to move on to the next level and then regional championships. And I made it to the world championships. And
like right off the gate.
The first year I tried, yeah.
Wow.
And so I realized that it's something that I think because I'm always challenging myself, I had a good baseline, but then I started realizing that it's such a fun challenge, and every day it's a different obstacle, every course. And so I really kind of dove into doing that and started competing a lot more. And I wasn't really training for it. I was kind of winging it for the first year. And then that's when my client kind of was telling me I should apply for the show. And so I did, and they chose me, and it's a huge honor to be chosen because I think they get tens of thousands of applications and they pick like 150 people to go compete. And so I think, and I guess they leaned into the barefoot thing because I'm the first one that's ever competed on the show barefoot. And so that's why they called me the Barefoot Ninja. And so that's kind of,
well, I wouldn't say it's a gimmick, but I would say since you are barefoot all the time by nature, that's actually who you are. Exactly. So it's kind of a lasting gimmick, as it were. It's really naturally what you do.
It's kind of like that unique thing about me, but it isn't. I'm not faking it.
You're not faking it. You've been doing it for almost 10 years. Yeah, so my goodness, that's who you are. Yeah. And so I'm sure they picked up on that. You competed, so you filmed a year ago, and then when did your competition air?
It aired in June of this year, 2024.
So last summer.
Yeah.
And how did you do?
I did pretty good. It was, I believe it aired on the premiere episode. And it kind of surprised me. The TV show actually shared my video like 3 hours before the premiere to hype up the premiere. And it got like 4 million views on Facebook. What? And I was like, what is happening? You know what I mean?
Mr. not social media guy.
Yeah, exactly. And so the other thing is when I competed in this first season, I had never trained ninja. I would go to competitions, but I was not training. I wasn't going and working out, and I'd never taken a ninja class, right? And so I went and competed, and I ended up making it to the second last obstacle. I fell on an obstacle called Duck Duck Goose.
Oh, nice.
So yeah, it's fun falling on like a child obstacle, but I did really well. I was very happy. Especially, I was very grateful that I made it past the foot obstacle in the first season. And then I came home from that and decided it was time to start actually training, and I started going to the ninja gym and training, and spent the next year really working at getting my arms and hands as strong as my feet so that I could continue competing and hopefully get the call back for the show the next year. So and you're 39, which I mean in regular people's years is not that big of a deal, but are you competing against people that are a lot younger than you? Yeah. All the ones that do the best are 15, 16, 17. And they also, the challenging thing is that a lot of them grew up watching the show and training at these ninja gyms. So they've evolved around, you know, like their young bodies have been doing it since they were 3. And so they can, I'll give you an example. Like I could maybe hang on a bar for 5 minutes. And that's after a year of training hard and working up my stamina. I saw a younger kid who his parents set up a movie on a thing, so on an iPad, so they could see how long he hung for, and he hung for the whole movie. And like I have to compete against that kid in a few years, you know. So it's tricky being someone who didn't grow up doing this. I never did it before I was in my late 30s.
That's impressive.
And I have to compete against sub 20-year-olds, and some of them are incredible. You know, they're a whole different dynamic, but it's a fun challenge. You know what I mean?
I can see where their body would evolve though, because I mean that's just evolution, how it works. Like wow,
if you're doing it for 10 years as you're growing, your joints grow adapting around that stress, and it's pretty amazing.
So do you plan on going, like making this, basically your main big hobby outside of work?
No, I love it, but I tend to ebb and flow with a lot of different things. You know what I mean? Like last summer, my wife and I were doing triathlons, and we did a couple, a half marathon. So just to see if I could do it all barefoot. And then I did a year. Yes, I did. And then I did a year of training for the show. And then, sometimes I get drawn into other things as we go, that keeps my excitement and piques my attention span. But I don't think this is something I'm ever going to not do, because it is such a fun, unique challenge. And every time I go to even the local ninja gym, there's different obstacles, different things to work on. So it keeps it spicy and exciting enough for me. So
spicy. Well, you know what you could do? You could teach. Maybe you could open up a ninja gym in Claremont.
I've been toying with the idea of maybe opening up a ninja gym in Claremont, because I think that would be fantastic.
That would be fantastic.
I know now that I've got 3 young kids and they love to go do ninja, so having one locally I think would be incredible.
So you did get invited back for another competition. Talk about that. I know you can't say what happened, but talk about, getting invited back for a second round at American Ninja Warrior.
I got the call to compete on season 17, and I flew out to Vegas last month and competed. So I'm not allowed to say how it went.
I'm not allowed to ask.
But it should be airing sometime in 2025, and I'm looking forward to that.
Well, we look forward to it as well. Well, Langdon, I'm going to call you. I just have to call you Barefoot Ninja now.
That's what a lot of people call me.
Langdon, it's been so much fun having you on the Healthy Living podcast today, and I wish you all the best in the future. And we'll have you back next time to see how you do on a next competition, maybe.
Yes.
Okay. That's it for this edition of the Healthy Living podcast. We'll see you next time.